They didn't knock. They didn't call. They didn't warn me. They just erased my wife. When I stepped off the helicopter and saw the mountain stripped bare, I didn't understand what I was looking at. The coordinates were right. The ridge line was right. But the house, the one place on earth that still felt like she was alive, was gone. Not damaged. Not condemned. Gone. Reduced to a flattened scar of mud, broken glass, and splintered wood before the morning fog even lifted. 6 hours. That's all it took. 6 hours for an HOA to destroy a $4.2 million home built from promises, grief, and love, while I was 1,600 miles away doing state business. And the reason they gave? Failure to pay HOA fines. That sentence still makes my jaw lock. Because it wasn't just false. It was calculated. Let me slow this down, because this is an HOA story that goes far beyond lawn violations and angry emails. This is the moment I realized how far a petty tyrant will go when they think you're powerless. I'm standing there on the mountain, the wind cutting through my coat, the smell of diesel still heavy in the air. Twisted rebar sticks up through the soil like exposed ribs. Concrete slabs are shattered where the infinity pool once flowed toward the valley. That pool, my wife designed it from a hospital bed. She said it should feel like the water never ends, like the sky just keeps going. Now it was draining into the ravine below, carrying fragments of tile and plaster with it. At 6:47 a.m., while I was boarding a plane, the email went out. Demolition authorized. Signed by the HOA president, Vivian Pritchard. No court order. No emergency ruling. No legal right. Just an HOA Karen with a signature and a bulldozer contract. And here's the part that makes this HOA story different from every other one you've heard. Every fine they claimed was unpaid? I had already paid. Twice. Cancelled checks. Digital receipts. Written approvals from her own committee. All documented. All saved. Vivian didn't care. Because to her, I wasn't a judge anymore. I wasn't influential. I wasn't important. I was just a widower living quietly on a mountain, outside city limits, easy to steamroll. What she didn't know, what she couldn't possibly imagine, was that 3 weeks earlier, I'd taken an oath she never bothered to read about. But we're not there yet. To understand why this house mattered, you have to understand Elaine. My wife wasn't just an architect. She was the kind of person who could look at bare land and see a future. She'd sketch homes on napkins at dinner, on envelopes, on the margins of books. She believed buildings should belong to their environment, not dominate it. When ovarian cancer entered our lives, it didn't knock either. It took 18 months from diagnosis to goodbye. And in the final weeks, when the pain was constant and the medication barely touched it, she asked me for one thing. Promise me you'll build it. She showed me the drawings. Floor-to-ceiling windows facing the Continental Divide. Salvaged timber from century-old barns. Stone fireplaces made from river rock you could feel history in. A home that wasn't about luxury, but legacy. I promised her, and I kept that promise, which is why what the HOA did next wasn't just illegal. It was personal. Building that house was more than construction, it was a pilgrimage. 2 years of tracking down every piece of reclaimed timber she'd imagined. Cedar from a Montana barn, carrying the scent of mountain air and winters past. River rocks for the fireplace, each one set by hand so the crackle of the fire would echo like laughter. I remember the sound of the stones settling, the way the wood creaked under the weight of our dreams, the soft hum of the HVAC system I installed just to keep her sketches alive. Neighbors whispered about the Judge building, a fantasy. HOA newsletters called it an eyesore. But Elaine's vision was stubborn, unrelenting, beautiful. And then came the notice. $38,000 in unpaid fines. At first, I laughed. Mistake. Error. A clerical glitch. But as I read further, my blood ran cold. The fines weren't a mistake. They were deliberate. Each one designed to break me without leaving fingerprints. Each violation trivial. Some boards slightly misaligned, some bushes too tall. Nothing that should ever justify demolition. I called. I emailed. I presented receipts, checks, approvals. Every single document proving payment. And yet, the demolition date was set. The bulldozers arrived. I wasn't there. I had been in D.C., sworn in as governor just 3 weeks earlier. I had power now, more than Vivian or her HOA had ever imagined. But my power didn't stop the destruction in real time. I watched the photos come in. Pieces of timber she handpicked, smashed. River rocks tossed aside like rubble. The infinity pool collapsing, water tumbling down the cliff like her dreams were washing away. I felt rage, grief, disbelief, all at once. This isn't just another HOA Karen story. This is a story of losing something sacred, of institutions designed to protect communities instead being used as weapons. And here's the twist that makes this story impossible to skip. What Vivian didn't know, what no one realized, is that she just made the most expensive mistake of her life. Because you don't demolish the house of the governor. And you don't underestimate someone who's promised to honor a dying wife's last wish. In the next part, I'll take you behind the scenes. How a seemingly powerless mountain home became the center of a legal, political, and emotional showdown that none of us saw coming. I remember the moment I decided I wasn't going to stay silent. The first phone call to Vivian was polite. I wanted to give her a chance to correct what she thought was a misunderstanding. I even tried reasoning with her. Vivian, you have my receipt. You have approvals. This house is paid for, I said. Her voice on the line was icy, condescending. Oh, Governor, you misunderstand, she said. Rules are rules. 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 That's what she hid behind while 6 hours of destruction turned my wife's dreams into rubble. I'll never forget hanging up the phone and looking at the photos again. Every beam she'd chosen, every stone placed with care, every window she'd sketched while lying in that hospital bed, it was gone. And yet, somewhere deep inside, a plan began forming. This wasn't just about revenge. This was about justice. I called my chief of staff. I called lawyers. I called the local media. And I began gathering evidence. Not just the receipts, the approvals, the photos, but testimony from neighbors, builders, anyone who knew the truth. I needed more than outrage. I needed proof that this HOA had overstepped its authority, lied, and attempted to erase history itself. The twist? HOA regulations are usually a shield. They protect neighborhoods from chaos. But here, they became weapons. And weaponized institutions always leave a trail if you know where to look. And there was something else. Something Vivian never considered. Public perception. People love a story about a tyrant being exposed. And I had one ready. As governor, I couldn't just bulldoze the HOA back. That would be petty. But I could make sure the world saw every violation, every lie, every injustice. The story was no longer about a house. It was about power. And how the powerless, or at least the seemingly powerless, can turn the tables. And here's the cliffhanger. I had a plan that would make this HOA wish they'd never touched a single beam of that mountain home. But executing it meant playing a dangerous game with politics, public opinion, and legal maneuvering. Next, I'll show you exactly how I turned the tables on an entire HOA committee, and why one signature changed everything. The moment I realized Vivian had underestimated me was the moment I walked into the HOA office. I wasn't there as a judge. I wasn't there as a widower. I was there as governor, a position she clearly hadn't checked before thinking she could destroy a home with impunity. Her office smelled of cheap perfume and stale coffee. Framed certificates lined the walls, each a reminder of the little authority she clung to. And behind the desk, she sat, smug like she'd already won. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't threaten. I just laid the evidence on the table. The receipts for every unpaid fine. Emails confirming approvals from her own committee. Photos of the demolished home, each labeled and time-stamped. She looked at them. Her smile faltered. She tried to reach for excuses, to pivot, to blame someone else. You see, Governor, she said, voice wavering slightly. Rules are rules. I cut her off. Not when rules are weaponized against the innocent. Not when they destroy lives under false pretenses. You signed off on this. You authorized this destruction. And now the people and the law are watching. Her eyes narrowed. She didn't know what I would do next. And that hesitation? That's all I needed. The first public step was simple: transparency. I called a press conference, released the documentation, and showed the world how an HOA could overreach, and why it shouldn't. The reaction was immediate. Social media erupted. Local news picked it up. People everywhere who had ever fought a Karen, a tyrant HOA, or an impossible fine suddenly had someone on their side. But Vivian? She panicked. Emails flooded her inbox. Board members demanded meetings. And all the while I was calculating the next step. Because publicity was only half the battle. The other half? Legal accountability. I filed the emergency injunction. I demanded restitution for destroyed property. And I made sure every interaction, every word, every signature was documented for the state's Attorney General. Vivian's smirk faded entirely the day she realized the governor wasn't just a title. It was leverage. It was authority. And it was personal. But here's the real kicker, the part most HOA stories never reach: the retaliation. The attempt to fight back, to discredit me, to spin the narrative. In the next part, I'll show you exactly how an HOA tried to turn the story around, and how I had already outmaneuvered them at every turn. Vivian didn't take my counterattack lying down. Emails turned into threats. Phone calls into harassment. Board members whispered behind closed doors. Governor or not, we can make this difficult, one wrote in a particularly arrogant message. But here's the thing, she had no idea who she was dealing with. I had spent decades in the legal system. I understood power, procedure, and leverage. And I had the moral high ground. Every document, every photo, every witness statement was locked in place. She couldn't spin this. She couldn't hide. And her every move was public now, captured in emails, screenshots, and press coverage. Then came the HOA's big play. A last-minute attempt to claim emergency demolition was justified. They tried to argue that unpaid fines, despite proof of payment, meant the home posed a danger to the neighborhood. That's when I smiled. Because the real danger wasn't to the neighborhood. It was to their credibility. And in court, credibility is everything. I filed an immediate injunction and demanded full restitution, not just for materials, but for the emotional damage of destroying a widow's dream home. I even arranged for testimony from the contractors, neighbors, and friends who had witnessed every step of construction and every violation notice. The evidence stacked up like a mountain of truth against their flimsy claims. Every false fine, every fabricated violation became a nail in their coffin. And Vivian? She was panicking. She realized that this wasn't just a court case. It was exposure. Social media, news outlets, local blogs, everyone now knew her name. Karen HOA president? Yeah, she was trending. But here's the part that shocked even me. When the first hearing started, some board members confessed they were pressured into signing demolition orders. They admitted they knew the fines were paid. They admitted they'd been bullied by Vivian's ambition. And just like that, the entire HOA's authority collapsed under the weight of truth. Yet the story isn't over. Public pressure, legal strategy, and moral outrage built momentum, but the final act? That's the one that left the entire HOA gasping. In the next part, I'll reveal the move that completely dismantled Vivian's power, and ensured no HOA could ever touch my family's legacy again. The final move wasn't flashy. It didn't involve shouting or drama. It was surgical. I convened a meeting, not just with Vivian, but with the entire HOA board. Cameras off, microphones on. Every word recorded. Every signature verified. I presented a simple, undeniable truth. You destroyed a home. You lied. You abused authority. And now the law and the people are watching. Board members shifted uncomfortably. Vivian tried her usual charm, but the facade was cracked. She was no longer in control. Every lie she told had a counterproof ready. Every excuse she offered was met with documents, photos, and public testimony. Then came the blow they didn't see coming. I invoked the state's oversight powers, not as governor but as someone sworn to uphold justice. I nullified their fines. I demanded restitution. I placed the HOA under mandatory compliance review. And I made it clear, any future attempts to weaponize rules would result in criminal investigation. The room went silent. Vivian's face went pale. The other board members were frozen. They had just realized that the governor wasn't just a figurehead. He was someone willing to wield authority to protect what was right. And the public? They loved it. News outlets ran stories, social media exploded. People who had ever suffered under petty HOA tyranny saw hope. One by one, they started sharing their stories. And suddenly, Vivian Pritchard wasn't the queen of the HOA, she was the cautionary tale. By the time I left the meeting, the message was clear. HOA rules exist to protect communities, not destroy lives. And if anyone tries to misuse that power again, the consequences will be swift, public, and severe. But there was one last surprise, a personal one, that no one expected. In the next and final part, I'll reveal how Elaine's dreams survived in a way Vivian never imagined, and why this story ends not with rubble, but with triumph. The rubble on the mountain wasn't the end, it was the beginning. After the legal battles, the public exposure, and the complete collapse of Vivian's HOA reign, something unexpected happened. People started reaching out, builders, architects, neighbors, even strangers who had heard the story. Everyone wanted to help rebuild. I realized something important. Elaine's vision wasn't just a house. It was a symbol, a testament to love, perseverance, and the belief that a single family's dream matters, even in the face of bureaucracy, greed, and petty tyranny. We began reconstruction, piece by piece, timber by timber, river rock by river rock. And this time, it wasn't just about fulfilling her sketches, it was about making sure her story could never be erased. The infinity pool? Rebuilt, stronger, flowing toward the valley like it was meant to. The salvaged cedar? Hung like a promise. Every beam told a story. Every stone whispered history. Vivian tried to intervene again, even after her exposure, but the law was on our side, the public on our side, and the legacy of love and justice stronger than any HOA fine. I stand on that mountain now, looking at a home that isn't just wood, stone, or glass. It's hope, memory, and triumph. And I think of Elaine. I think of her last sketch, her whispered instructions, her unwavering faith. She didn't live to see it. But together, with the law, the people, and a little unstoppable stubbornness, we made sure her dream survived. So if an HOA ever threatens your home, or a petty tyrant thinks they can erase your life's work, remember this story. Stand firm, fight smart, and never underestimate the power of love, justice, and a little leverage, because some dreams are too important to destroy.